Why is it so difficult to train Gen Z? And why are restaurants having such a hard time getting them bought in? Well, in this video, I'm going to go over exactly why A, it's hard to train Gen Z, B, how you can overcome it, and C, how you can systematize it. Training Gen Z is absolutely possible, but I see stuff online all the time about how difficult it is to train, how the frustrations people have, the fact that they'll just quit and they'll walk out of a job, they don't want to work, they don't want to show up. But the simple fact of the matter is companies do it all the time. Hospitality groups do it all the time, not high-performing hospitality groups that pay a lot of money. Places like QSRs, like Chick-fil-A, do it all the time. They get young staff to get bought in, Gen Z staff, and even the generation before them to get bought in. And the question is, how do they do it? Because they're a clear case study that it's absolutely doable. You have to understand that there's been 3 different generations that have gone through our workforce that we don't pay attention to. And we need to understand why Gen Z is so hard to motivate and so hard to get bought in. The first generation is industrial. The industrial generations were our grandparents, right? We're talking about 1950s, 1960s, and even 1970s. And these were people who needed jobs, right? If you didn't have a job back then, you could end up homeless. You could lose everything. You can end up in soup lines. You can end up sleeping on the streets. And so you want to do everything you could to avoid losing your job. And so that industry, that generation would always put up with more. They would work harder. They would work the hardest they could. They would work in terrible environments or unfavorable environments. And they had that tenacity because if you didn't have a job, there was no one there to save you. And it was difficult to go get another job because you had to go walk around in the streets and try and just apply at random places to try and find a job. Then we got into the information generation. The informational generation was the dawn of the internet, right? Around that time and a little bit before that time when information started flowing in, information was more easy to access. And during this generation, people were still motivated, but they're motivated in a different way. Now you could be motivated to buy nice things. You could be motivated to buy a nice house. You could be motivated to buy a second car or a nice car. You could be motivated by a boat, right? You knew that if you worked harder and accomplished more things and work and put extra work in and got full buy-in and a good attitude at work, that you could eventually buy nice things. And so people were motivated to keep their job. They're motivated to work harder. They're motivated to stay on task. Now we're in the technology revolution. This is iPads, iPhones, internet, social media, right? And this generation, Gen Z, operates completely differently because their motivation is gone. If they don't like their job, they can leave and go to next door and get a job somewhere else. They can go online and find 1,000 jobs where they can go apply anywhere and get a job. Secondly, they're not motivated by money because money doesn't solve their problems and money doesn't lead to better things in life. If they work harder, they're still going to be paycheck to paycheck. If they work exponentially harder, they're still probably going to be paycheck to paycheck, right? And so they're not motivated by, hey, if I work hard, I can buy a house. If I work hard, I can buy a nice car or a boat. That's never going to happen for them. It's not even in the realm of possibility. And so they're not motivated by that. So what they are motivated by, if I can't buy nice things, then I want to have a nice life or I want to have a nice work-life balance. Now, trust me, I'm not about work-life balance. I never have been. I don't think it's going to make you successful in life, but that is the Gen Z's mentality is they want work-life balance. They want their days off. Now, that's part of it, okay? Second piece is they need to have purpose. Now that you can't give them a job where they can buy nice things if they work harder, we have to be able to give them purpose in their job. And so that's why a mission is so important. Mission-driven businesses are so important. Hospitality businesses can be mission-driven all the time. We are here to improve the world through hospitality. We're here to improve our guests' lives. We're here to improve our employees' lives, right? Being mission-driven is important. Chick-fil-A does this masterfully. That's how they get sometimes, in some states, 14-year-olds bought in to the job, right? They're sitting there smiling while they're putting in your order, smiling while they're making your food, smiling while they're handing your bag of food is because they're bought into the ultimate mission. And the last piece is they need consistency and structure. So before, right, the information generation, you didn't need consistency and structure because you can dangle, hey, you can have a great life, buy a nice house, buy nice cars or a boat, whatever it is, right? You can buy nice things, you can put your kid through college if you work hard, and the conditions might not be favorable and things might not be consistent. Leadership might not be consistent. Accountability might not be consistent, but there's light at the end of the tunnel because you're going to be making more money. And here's something you have to understand about money right now for Gen Z. The cost of living has gone up by 20% since 2020. but their wages have not gone up by 20%. So that means that their dollars are worth 20% less, but they're not making 20% more dollars, so it's not evening out. The cost of buying a house gone through the roof too. So all of these things are factors into why they're not motivated by money anymore. So if they're not motivated by money, they have to have purpose, and now they have to have structure and consistency. Gen Z does not care about accountability. They're not afraid of accountability. They will not walk out of a job because of accountability. You see it all the time. Like I see on social media, people post things like, oh, if I tell Gen Z to do something, they just walk out, right? If I tell them to do a simple thing, they just walk out. If I just correct them once, they walk out. No, they walk out when it's inconsistent accountability. That means all leadership is not being consistent across the board. That means that people aren't being held accountable across the board consistently, right? That means one leadership is handling accountability different than the other. We all have to be aligned. If we're aligned and we're delivering accountability across the board consistently, they are not upset about that. And again, Chick-fil-A, and I just go back to that because it's such a big case study, is proof of that. They have a high accountability level in their business. They hold people accountable consistently at a high level. That's how they perform so well. That's how they do so well. And they do that in order to chase excellence. But they're proof that you can hold Gen Z accountable all day long, and they're not walking out in droves because they're consistent with their accountability. They're clear with their accountability, clear with expectations. So how do you systematize it? Well, first things first is you have to have a hiring process that's dialed in. Setting expectations, I call it the expectation phase. Setting expectations is everything in the hiring process. Not only are we asking them questions, but we're setting expectations. Here's what we believe in, here's what we're expecting from you, and here's what happens when you don't do it. Are you okay with that? Can you work in those conditions? Setting expectations. In the training process, which I call the commitment phase, is we're getting them to commit to everything that we're going to do. No one sits through the training process saying, I'm not going to do that. They will commit to whatever you ask them to do. Again, this is setting up structure. And we want to set up expectations even more, reinforce expectations, and set up accountability, right? So we're setting all this stuff up as they're training. After that, we have to make sure that what I call in the reinforcement phase, the final phase, when they get on the floor, that everybody's actually delivering the standards and keeping up the standards that we set our standards. This is how Chick-fil-A operates. Because when they set the expectation phase and the hiring phase, the commitment phase and the second phase, and the last phase, the reinforcement phase, when they get on the floor, committing to those expectations, committing to all the commitments, when that employee gets on the floor, then they see that everybody's actually doing it. Everyone's doing what we committed to and the expectation we set. The standards being held across the board. So now they have no problem holding those standards. And if they don't, they know they're going to be held accountable. They have no problem with that because it's happening on the floor in real time. Everybody's being upheld. Leadership's consistent across the board. Structure is built, right? Now they have no problem executing. But when they get on the floor and half the people are doing it, half the people are not doing it, well, then the standard isn't the standard. There is no standard here. I just do whatever I see fit. And if you try and hold me accountable, well, that person's not being held accountable. That person's not being held accountable. And that manager doesn't hold me accountable. Then that's when they walk out. Okay, well, I don't want to do it. I quit. Or I don't feel like doing it. I'm going to say no, right? Or I'm going to get upset. Because there's no structure and there's no consistency. Before, we can get away with that. The generation before, we can get away with that. The way that money was valued before, we can get away with that. Now we can't get away with that. We have to create a structured and consistent work environment for your team. So focus on that. Focus on creating an environment where Gen Z thrives. Instead of complaining about Gen Z, that's not going to get you anywhere. Make sure you just create an environment where Gen Z can thrive.